Hi and welcome to Back to the Tactics board. Today we're looking at one of my favourite formations, the 4-3-3. We'll look at the strengths of it and potential issues you might have when using it. Here we have the players then in a 4-3-3 formation. Let's look at some of the strengths and features. Well, first off, you've got a back four. So back four gives you good width, good coverage of the pitch. You've got cover and support in all areas. Having three in the central area means you can dominate in possession and out of possession, putting pressure on the ball when you're out of possession, and with the ball have plenty of options. Side centre mids can really bomb on from deep, and this can be really hard to track for an opponent. To make that happen though, they're going to have to be fit. You know, if these players are not able to get up and down the pitch and they end up just coming back for the ball, then the gap between midfield and attack can be too great. One of the real positives of the 4-3-3 is having those three in midfield means you often play through the middle initially to get the ball wide, and the real advantage of that is if it goes into the defence from the back, ends up in midfield with one of your three central midfielders, it's less predictable, which way you're going to go. So if an opposition tries to be quite compact in there, they don't know whether you're going left or right. Alternatively, if you have two up front and it's a 4-4-2 and it's less likely going to switch through the midfield, it becomes more predictable and they can shut down an area you're trying to attack into. So just having those options in the middle means you get on the ball in the central area and can then play wide from there. And of course, one of those obvious strengths of this system is having advanced wingers on either side. It's attacking, it's exciting. If the players have the right, attributes in those positions, often we talk about speed, but speed of thought there, good technical ability, are they good in one-on-ones, can they put crosses in, then it's exciting. They're not having to start from these often deeper positions, say from a 4-5-1 or a 4-4-2, because you're giving them a bit more freedom to get forward and covering that with midfield. They stay more advanced, and so when the ball comes out there, they can often end up in a one-on-one situation, which as a fan of football, that's certainly exciting when you see those moments. So just having that advanced width throughout the game is exciting. It means that even if certain attacks don't come off, they don't work out, you're always knocking on the door in those areas. You're always kind of asking the question, and it only takes the winger to beat that fullback one time in those 5 attacks they've had at them in that opening spell, and they can get a lethal crossing because they're in one-on-ones. So you're really challenging an opponent to support their fullback more. Because you have this advanced width with 7 and 11 here, 9 is less likely to need to make the channel runs. They're more likely to leave these spaces for the wingers to attack into. So they can kind of hold more central, holding up the ball, laying it off to your attacking 8 and 10. But it's also about being in the box for deliveries. So when the ball does go wide, 9 is already in this central area, trying to find a bit of space, get on that front post often, with the other winger then coming into the back. So you can make a real focus of 9 being a striker, an out-and-out striker, staying central, getting in the box regularly. And because the 9 is staying more central and looking to make those big runs to the box for deliveries and so on, it tends to pin 2 defenders there of the opposition. They're unlikely to lead them in a one-on-one. And because of that, that's where your 7 and 11 get their one-on-one opportunities. Another beauty of having these 3 players in advanced areas and having the attacking mids as well is this formation works really well with pressing. So the ball does go one side, for example here, 9 can be cutting that ball off. Your attacking mid can get either into this area here or actually be the one that goes onto the press, and 7 can be looking to close this gap off and make the pass predictable to 3, or even cut that off and come and attack themselves, get onto the ball there. So you've got real opportunities there to work as a pressing 3. Should add as well, you probably bring in your other winger as well, so all of a sudden you've still got the cover midfield, because 8 can then drop in alongside 6 here. So this can be a really good pressing formation. You've still got the cover behind you, but you can put real pressure on the ball. One of the real beauties of the 4-3-3 for building possession is that it creates lots of good angles of support, lots of diamonds and triangles, just because of the different lines of the team, and it changes so fluidly in shape when you're in possession and when you're out of possession, which I'll show you in a moment. But certainly in possession, just this idea that you've got lots of triangles and diamonds, so you're not square to each other like you might be in a 4-4-2. So the fluidity of the shape, I think, is a real strength here. When you're in possession, say the keeper's on the ball, a common thing to do, you set the backs pull wide, like they do in many formations, but you hold a midfield player, just dropping in between, making like a third option there, allows your fullbacks to push on a little bit more as well. Your 8 and 10 can either both drop into these areas, or one might be more advanced and one might drop into these spaces and be the link player. So you might have this kind of thing going on. But essentially a kind of 3-4-3 when you're in possession there, this quickly turns into just with some simple movements, you know, and all of a sudden the build-up play, there's all those angles again, triangles and diamonds of support, options for kind of W passes as I like to call them, which go through a line of a defensive team and gets them turning, and then when the ball gets played back again, they've dropped off, the press is killed from the opponent. When you're out of possession for a prolonged amount of time, will eventually get pulled back in, and you can end up with a 4-5-1 out of possession, making you quite solid and hard to get through. So I do love that fluidity of this formation, how quickly it moves between the 4-3-3 to 3-4-3 to 4-5-1 and different variations too. If your wingers are good in those one-on-ones and your 8 and 10 are good at getting up and down the pitch and supporting defensively and in an attacking sense, this formation can really put you on the front foot and very hard for an opponent to kind of get a foothold in the game. However, if your 8 and 10 haven't got the running in them, haven't got the clever movement, or your 7-11 are not good at holding that ball, getting at one-on-ones, getting deliveries in box, if 9 is no good at holding up the play so support can arrive, then all of a sudden it can be leaving a load of gaps for an opponent. So let's look at some of the potential issues you might have with this formation now. I think first off, your defensive role of your wingers has to be clear. Are you expecting them to get back? And if they're getting back, are they getting back all the way to support the fullbacks? Are you expecting one to come back when the opponent are attacking down their side to support, and the other one just to kind of tuck into midfield here? What are you looking for from them? I think you need to be clear. Now, it depends on the opponent you're against and how dangerous they are. Having 3 in central midfield means to a certain extent they can shift across and support the fullback in these wide areas against the opposition fullback who might be bombing on, supporting their winger. You might be able to cope with that without 7-11 having to come all the way back in, which means if you do win the ball back, you've got those wide options early. However, if you're doing that and you're playing against a team that are good at getting the ball in here, back in and out the other way, now there's a big space. And now that's where 3 will struggle to cover and have good coverage of the full width of the pitch. So it depends on the opponent. Are they good at keeping the ball? Are they good at switching the play? This formation would be very vulnerable to big diagonals into these spaces if your wingers are not getting back. But it can also be that kind of bluff as well of saying, no, we're going to keep our wingers bombed on. And then they know if they push on here, the ball's lost. You're straight into those channels. And at that point, your 3 has to start thinking, are we keeping the ball well enough for me to bomb on here? Do I need to stay responsible here? So you're playing a bit of a game of bluff again, where you're saying to the opponent, we're going to take this risk, what are you going to do? This is why, though, because it's so attacking, though, when you've got players really bombing on, so let's just do an example, you might have all these players getting forward, you might also have your fullbacks in this system really pushing on, 6 kind of dropping in, and all of a sudden, you cause lots of problems to the opponent, but it takes one overlap there, opponent win the ball back, and you can be caught out now in these areas. So depending on how well you use the ball, depending on how quick and agile and mobile your defenders are, it can be prone to counter-attacks, depending on how well you adapt to transition really, and just the individual physical attributes of your players. Another big thing I'd say, as good as this formation is for building that formation through the central area, because you have 3 in there, you want variety of movement. For example, if 2 is on the ball and you've got 10 running towards it, 6 running towards it, 8 coming across, you're actually killing your own space and bringing opponents onto you. So you've got that thing, if you need some variety of movement, do you really want 10 in here blocking off any potential ball to number 9? Or do you want 10 to get forward nearer to number 9 in the situation? Do you want 8 to kind of be here, so when the ball does come into 6, you've got that extra link player to move the ball across the other way? So you just need that coordinated movement, a bit of thought. If 10 does drop in to get it, does 6 see that, move across? Does 8 make this movement? A bit of a rotation. So whilst it has these great options, it is reliant on the players moving in coordination. And 9 can be isolated in this formation if you're not careful. If 7-11 are staying really wide, it means that unless you get support, the Blues can go really tight on number 9. And if 9's not strong in those situations, you'll find it doesn't stick. So your 8 and 10, just as they're starting to get forward, the ball goes forward into 9, it's lost straight away. However, you can switch that around to a strength. If at least one of 8 and 10 are getting to these pockets here, really bombing on, not just moving towards the ball all the time, then they can really cause problems for an opponent. They've got a player off their shoulder making these big movements. So when the ball does get played into 9, they've got the layoff option there. You really will need at least one of 8 or 10 getting nearer to your number 9 when you're building up the play. I talked before about the thing of fullbacks bombing on, and this can be a real strength, because when your fullbacks bomb on, this allows your 7 and 11 to move inside. You know, you see a lot of inverted wingers now cutting inside onto their stronger foot so they can shoot from this area. Really hard to deal with for defenders. The downside to this can be they can bomb on, possession's lost, and there's big spaces for an opponent to attack into. I'd say therefore that your 2 and 3 need to be fit. They need to be able to have good attacking qualities as well as defensive qualities. I'd say it's both a strength and a weakness in the 4-3-3 then, that it's more open to interpretation. The 4-4-2 standard formation can be much more straightforward. Your banks of 4, it's clearer what the shape is defensively. Whereas in the 4-3-3, there's more interpretation there. Are you expecting one of 6 or 8 to drop in alongside, one of 8 or 10 to drop in alongside number 6? Are you expecting 8 to be responsible for this side, 10 for this side? Are you expecting your 7-11 to get in, or is that 8 and 10's job? Just these kind of questions you'd have to ask. Provided your players are clear on those things though, I think it's such a great formation for that fluidity. I love the fact though that players have to react to each other's movements in this system. So if 3 has really bombed on in this attack, 2 might see that and decide just to sit in a little bit more in here and be covering in case we lose it, or be in there to kind of get the ball back in, recycle it back out the other way. I like those kind of things. I like that 8's gone on to near number 9, so 10 goes and finds a different space. I like that 6 is continually looking where the gaps are left. 3's bombed on, they might come across into here, 10 gets into here, 8 supports the attack. That these kind of things might happen. We lose the possession, 6 gets across. So I do like the way players react to each other's movements, which means they're being alert on the pitch and reacting to the situation as it develops. So there we go then, the 4-3-3 formation. It's been used by some of the most exciting and attacking teams in the history of football, and it's been implemented by some of the most progressive coaches that have ever been involved in the game. Really exciting system if it's used well. Hope you found that useful, and see you next time.